The Curmudgeon Rock Report. Curmudgeon rhymes with bludgeon. Rock gods do it right. So do rock nerds. We're here for the rock. 1965, 2021, doesn't matter. Crude, rude, yet somehow sophisticated. Welcome. Enjoy the show.
We suspect you needed a little bit more curmudgeonly love in your life, so here we are again.
Yes.
This is Christopher O'Connor recording in and chiming in from just outside of Houston, Texas. And then, of course, as always, the man, the myth, the asshole, Arturo Andrade from Gwangju, South Korea. What's going on, brother?
Thank you for that lovely introduction. You know, it's kind of weird. It's kind of interesting. Today's episode, we're doing the 20 best bands / artists in modern rock. However, interestingly enough, our parallel universe recommendations and our vault recommendations are, for the most part, decidedly non-rock.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just noticed that we're doing R&B, soul, and hip hop for the most part.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, it kind of it's the direct opposite of the meat of this here sandwich, for sure.
Just when you think we're gonna zig, we're gonna zag.
Zaggity, zaggity, zaggity. Absolutely. Welcome to our parallel universe. As we've said in the past, this is the world that we have created. Maybe we're H.P. Lovecraft or one of those guys. We have a universe where things are upside down and the unpopular is popular, the uncool is cool. The stuff that doesn't sell is plastered on the covers of the Rolling Stone and on the billboards. And so here's where we get to talk about artists that we think ought to be huge and should at least be huge with you in your crates here in 2021. On that note, Arturo, who are you focused on this week in the Parallel Universe?
Well, I am focusing on a recently released record by a woman who her real name is Aria Wells, but her artist name or her stage name is Green Tea Peng, P-E-N-G, right? Green tea, because she loves green tea, I guess. Anyway, she is a London-based British R&B soul singer who describes her music as psychedelic R&B. And really, that is quite an apt description. And the name of the album is Man Made. It is her debut album, came out this year. Now, Green Tea Peng, she was born to an Arab father and an African mother, and she's from the London area, and she lived the expat life, which I am an expat myself, and she lived that life in Tulum, Mexico for several years, working various jobs at hotels and as a yoga instructor. And then, at some point, she started singing at open mic nights at some bars, and soon enough, she got the music bug, eventually joining a band and making more money performing there than in her regular jobs. She returned to London. She hooked up with a producer named Earbuds. I'm sure it's not his real name. And and recorded and released her debut EP, Sensi, in 2018. The next year, she released another EP called Rising, and that EP produced a single called Downers. And that the video and the song was a huge YouTube hit, garnering 2.5 million views. So that was kind of like her breakthrough.
Uh-huh.
And now this brings us to her excellent debut album, Man Made, like I said, released this year. Imagine Erica Badu, or better yet, peak period, late 90s, early noughties Erica, doing trip hop and dub reggae.
Yeah, I thought Sade personally.
Sade, a little bit of that in there. You can also hear echoes of Massive Attack and Lee Scratch Perry,
Yes.
but not so much that she's ripping them off. She assimilates rather than regurgitates her influences, and the result is a uniquely trippy, groovy, funky, hip hop inflected mix. Standout tracks, my recommendations: the jazz funk groover "Nah It Ain't the Same," which is one of the singles, kind of recalls Low End Theory era Tribe Called Quest. There's the heavily tripped out funk of the 1-2 punch of the first two tracks, Make Noise and This Sound. And then you have the sweaty, lo-fi, dirty funk of the album closer. What's it called? Gymtastic Blues, which sounds oddly like Luscious Jackson.
Is it the beat of the world?
I love that band.
Yes, yeah, I'm a big Luscious Jackson fan myself.
My only complaint with the album is that it's a little too long. The middle of the record has some filler, a few too many overly mellow, same-sounding grooves that wouldn't be out of place in a corny, gentrified bar in Lower Manhattan. But that's a small complaint regarding what is otherwise, in my opinion, so far the best R&B album of the year.
Waking up to this disarray, this uncertainness only seems to serve the misery. May a place on me, murder take from me all of this bullshit. I do not need it. I believe in magic because I've seen it. Nothing you, the ego, you know already how it goes. I got a strong man, strong girl, from my head to my toe, back to my ego. These earthly habits, they got to get going. I let go of desires, but I truly let go of the fires that burn them and fuel them. It's so hard to be human.
No.
Okay, I guess I won't comment too much because, as it turns out, we are doing the yin and yang of modern British electro R&B house music. Green Tea is, she's very, very good. However, I would venture to say that my selection from pretty much this a similar tree is better, which is funny because you turned me on to them. So
Salt. This band is awesome. I'm a big fan of this band.
Yeah, and so to kind of segue, so Green Tea Pang, she's pretty awesome. And again, I hear a lot of Sade, and then obviously Massive Attack. Speaking of Massive Attack, they're kind of the spiritual godfathers of this whole thing. So Salt, that's not salt as in what you sprinkle. It's not assault and battery. It's Salt, SAULT. So let me tell you a little bit about this group. So Salt is an amusement park ride through 50 plus years of R&B, funk, disco, and house music, as well as a little bit of reverence for gospel. This British group may be the only band / studio project I've ever heard that within 45 seconds makes me think, hey, I hear Curtis Mayfield, and hey, I hear Tricky, and hey, I hear A Tribe Called Quest. And for what it matters, also the Beastie Boys. So this band tends to filter the Black Soul experience through a decidedly EDM lens, which makes them pretty awesome. The band's latest album is called 9, which is a 34-minute infusion of knob-twiddling, cold rockin', and textured grandeur. Emphasis on textured. I'm not so sure that there's an individually great song on this album, but man, it would be a great soundtrack for drinks with friends at a crowded lounge. It's a fantastical, consistently chill mood piece that winds down with real heartache and longing with this piano-sprinkled ballad at the end called Lights in Your Hands. I would not say that this is quite as good as 2020's Untitled Black is. I think that's their best record. That one is incredibly rich and it's really intoxicating sonically and is very influenced by sort of the Alan Lomax kind of thing with gospel vocals and echoes, and it's just very very cool. And so really, this kind of art installation, retro Black 70s thing has sprung up quite a bit over the past couple of decades, especially in the UK. Salt, though, may just be the best of the post-Massive Attack, post-Tricky bunch. To honor a personal hero of mine, Roger Ebert, 2 enthusiastic thumbs up.
Yeah, Salt's really good. They're very prolific. They've been putting out a lot of music. The main guy in Salt, his name is Inflo. That's his stage name, I guess. Or his
INFLO.
Yeah. He actually co-wrote a song by Michael Kiwanuka. Right. Yeah. His most famous song to date, Black Man in a White World. Inflo co-wrote that song. Salt are great. I think their best album is their first one, the debut from 2019. It's called 5, as in number 5. And they've been kind of refining that formula for the last couple of years. I put them the way I describe them. It's classic, early 70s R&B soul funk plus classic 70s Afrobeat, Fela Kuti, heavy Fela Kuti influence, plus early 80s new wave pop, plus a really strong dose of 90s neo soul.
Yeah.
I do hear a bit of D'Angelo in here sometimes with them.
Yeah.
I hear a bit of, again, I'm going to name check her again, Erykah Badu.
Yeah. And they really are a black music jukebox.
Yeah.
And I also would say some Detroit house is in there too.
Yeah, a little bit of that too. Yeah, they're really eclectic, and they put out a lot of stuff, but most of their albums are really good. Like I said, I think a 5 is the best one, and the one I really like is Untitled Rise from last year, 2020.
Yeah, which is also good, but I'm a bigger fan of Black Is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just that there's something going on there. It's just kind of a purposeful project and achievement, for sure.
Yeah, so, the new album's called 9. The best songs on it, I like Alcohol, the ballad. There's like a big Torch song ballad, beautiful song. That one, You From London, which is really funny. It's kind of lyrically just goofing on the stupidity and the ignorance of Americans when it comes to their knowledge of other countries.
Yeah.
And it's pretty appropriate.
Yeah, that's like shooting fish in a barrel. Kind of unfair, Yeah, and like Arturo said, he's an expat, so he knows of what he speaketh from. It's something there. I do have days, for what it's worth, especially in the last 2 years, where I'm like, hey, maybe he had a right idea 15 years ago. But
and I haven't regretted it since when I left in January 2005. All right, today's topic. Now, like I said earlier, we're doing our picks for the 20 best modern rock bands / artists. Now let's describe the parameters. In our parallel universe segment that we do every episode, we choose new albums by contemporary artists and bands that, in a parallel universe version of Earth where rock music is still huge in a mainstream way and people have good taste, would be on regular rock radio rotation. Well, for this episode, we're expanding that concept to an entire episode. We will count down not 10, but 20 bands / artists in contemporary or modern rock who, in this parallel universe Earth, would be all over rock radio, would get all kinds of mainstream media and exposure, and would be playing larger venues to larger amounts of people than they do in our much inferior universe's version of Earth. There are, however, a few asterisks to be given. A few of these bands really are not that contemporary in the sense that they've been around for a really long time, as many as 20 years in some cases. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's just us really wanting to give shine to these bands that we really love.
Right.
And
But the key is that even though some of these bands have been around a long time, they're still relevant.
they're so relevant, right? And also, a few of these bands / artists already are quite popular in the music media world, and really, in the music media world, they're really big, and they already played a decent theater ballroom capacity sized venues. All we're saying is that these bands / artists should be even bigger than they already are.
Oh yeah, I mean, a couple of these bands should be filling stadiums. I think
Yeah,
could be filling. If we were like 40 years ago, they could be filling stadiums. Yeah,
right. And finally, this episode is also the Curmudgeon's opportunity to stress that rock music is very much alive and well, and in the good hands of bands / artists, keeping the flame lit for authentic, honest, and inventive music in the genre.
True enough. So a few comments that I have about this list, and some of this is just commentary, but also some of this is sort of trivia and odds and sods about the list. So I think this episode really kind of perfectly illustrates one of our 6 main tenets of our curmudgeonly worldview, which we talked about in episode 1. Go check it out. That while there's plenty of great music still out there, you have to work really hard to find it. This really is where Arturo has me beat. I learned of 12 of these 20 entries from Mr. Arturo Andrade himself. 8 of them, I came to on my own, and in a couple of instances got to new stuff before him because I was so enthusiastic. And so, look, the fact that I'm the laggard proves that, yes, I am a married white guy in his 40s in America. But because of not just this podcast, but COVID, and in large part because of some of these bands, I find myself working harder than I have in years. And it's a much more satisfying route to discovery than being spoon-fed like I was and like we were back in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
Or during my music journalism career, which was, another lifetime ago.
Right.
So a few things to mention. One of the things that I learned from when we were divvying out the assignments, I got assigned several women who are just extraordinary, or at least 2 and 2.5, I suppose. Not a half woman, but the band. No, there's just a lot of really talented female singer-songwriters, and just a lot of wholly original female artists now, and so that's exciting and something to note there. A couple other things. One thing you'll notice, and if you've been listening to us, you probably already know this: Australia and Philadelphia will have prominent places. On or at the epicenter of these lists, and so I don't know if there's scenes represented, but there's something definitely percolating in the water supply there. And then one other thing to illustrate a point that Arturo made: it's not necessarily that these artists aren't they're not. Some of them are celebrated. They're not obscure. They're not living next to a rock critic in Brooklyn. Just to point out, we've got 2 Grammy winners on the list.
Right.
So the whole point is, it's not we want people to listen to these. We just think that these these should be in heavy radio rotation and just really icons instead of just folks. Basically folks that make Arturo and I and you out there in the curmudgeonly universe excited.
The 1990s were the 4th golden age of rock. I'm stealing that term from Arturo because I wholeheartedly agree. It's a perfect way to describe the era. Why do we make that argument? Find out soon. The Curmudgeon Rock Report will be basing an entire series of episodes on the topic. From Lollapalooza, the good kind of shoegazing, and grunge, all the way through to EDM, mook rock, and Napster, we'll cover the spectrum of a beautiful, incredible span of time where everything changed. At first for the better, and ultimately perhaps for the much worse. What defined the 1990s for you?
Let us know at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com.
All right. So now we're going to get into the coveted, privileged top 20 curmudgeonly list of the best modern rock bands. We're going to start briefly. Number 20, Chris, one of my favorite singer-songwriter guitarists right now.
Yeah, we're talking about Steve Gunn. And so a little bit about Mr. Gunn. So right up front, we're going to kick off this list with what I'm calling our Philadelphia Philadelphia trilogy. Yep, the Philadelphia trilogy. Steve Gunn may live in Brooklyn now, but if you were in a band with the masterful Kurt Vile, you're a Philly guy, man. And like a lot of his peers from there and from this era, Gunn has a knack for tunes and melody. Unlike a lot of his peers, though, he takes the whole throwback idea a lot further, as in a lot further back than Tom Petty, Big Star, and Lou Reed.
Yeah.
Now, Gunn, you see, is a good old-fashioned folk songster. He's marvelous at the acoustic touch and weaponizing this lilting, singing high-register voice while mixing in some ethereal touches. I'd say see especially 2019's The Unseen in Between, which does a pretty good job of answering a question that nobody thought to ask before, which is, what if Gordon Lightfoot was actually good and had some backbone? Really, like I said, Mr. Gunn does not do Americana per se, but he's certainly steeped in the American vernacular, which explains why putting this clever Philly college boy with West Virginia's kaleidoscopic bluegrass band, the Black Twig Pickers, on 2015 Seasonal Hire actually works. I don't know if you've heard that record, but
no,
it's wild, it's woolly, and ultimately wondrous, and highly recommended. Essentially, the Black Twig Pickers are essentially a jam out bluegrass band from West Virginia. And so what this is it's 5 songs with Steve Gunn and these guys kind of doing these kind of weird, slithering, bluegrassy folk Appalachia songs. So strong songs, but a lot of like weird Appalachia stuff going on.
Right.
So, got to check it out.
That's a big thing on Steve Gunn. In my opinion, his kind of his masterpiece. His best record is 2014's Way Out Weather.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a phenomenal record. And the follow up from 2016, Eyes on the Lines, is more electric guitar heavy.
Yes.
But really, really good. I've always heard of a very distinct Grateful Dead influence in this guy. A lot of what he does, very Garcia-esque.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, it in terms of, well, there's the two sides of not early Dead, but I would say that sort of American Beauty through the rest of the 70s kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would say that they definitely have that going on. Yeah.
So Gunn, yet another reason people should go to Philadelphia and check out the live music scene there.
Absolutely. So
right.
Okay, so that is number 20. Number 19, sir.
Number 19. Yes. Now we're leaving the United States and we're going to Sweden. Hailing from Sweden, I think from Stockholm. This band is called Goat, and they're really more of a performance art collective than they are a band in the conventional sense. On stage, and every time there's any kind of publicity photo or publicity photo shoot, they dress in exotic masks and costumes straight out of tribal African and Native American cultures. And the music matches their look perfectly. They essentially take like deliriously funky 1970s Afrobeat music and merge it with whacked out, fuzzed out psychedelic rock. Think Fela Kuti and Jimi Hendrix somehow have 7 or 8 weird ass white Scandinavian children who get in touch with their African roots, like Akeem in the WWF, via their intoxicating and high energy live shows.
and there's some late 60s, early 70s kind of basement psychedelic soup stuff going on there too.
Yeah, but their live performance, that's what they're known for. They're known as this thrilling live band, and that's it's really what they're known for. They've released 2 live albums so far, and their most recent album is a soundtrack for this obscure movie called Double Date, which I never saw or heard. But if you really want to get a taste for this band's magic in the studio, look no further than their debut album from 2012, World Music, which is hands down one of the best albums of the decade. Their album from 2016, Requiem, is also a must listen with more acoustic textures and ventures into indigenous South American folk music. Yes, I swear this is great stuff.
Yes. Yeah, it really doesn't read well on paper now, does it? No.
No, it doesn't. But yeah, check out Goat. Highly recommended.
Yeah, yes, they're what you can call weird shit in one of the best possible ways. It's really like, take a nap on the bed listening to it on the headphones, and you're just going to be floating. It's
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
It's a great soundtrack for that. It's kind of like the half conscious, half dream world kind of thing. And yeah, like you said, it's ultimately it's cool stuff, but they're, like you said, the performance stuff is pretty wild.
Yeah.
They're Swedish guys that really wish they were from Nairobi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, or Mali, or one of those places. So
Yeah,
on
exactly.
that note,
All right. So the next band, number 18, is a band that I think Chris does too. You do as well, Chris. We think these ladies should be much, much, much bigger than they are.
they really are. They're like they should be stars.
Yeah, they're called Bleached, from the LA, Los Angeles area, and they are fronted by two singer-songwriter sisters, Jennifer and Jessica Clavin. And they've put out so far 3 albums of blissed out, perfectly melodic bubblegum pop rock, but in the best possible sense.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I mean, Chris and I, you and I were talking about this. They got a little bit of Liz Phair meets the Go-Go's meets, who else did you mention?
Well, no, I hear a lot of Courtney Love.
Yeah, they have a bit of hole in what they do.
Yeah, and like I said, it's basically, think of they're an interesting band. It's like, take like 30 plus years of Los Angeles female led rock and pop, and they're kind of a celebration and a roll up of all of that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're fantastic songwriters. And yeah, like if this band came out and it would have come out in the 90s, they would be on the cover of Rolling Stone. I mean, they would have been stars. And their probably their greatest song from their 2016 album, Welcome the Worms, is called Sour Candy.
Love
like
it.
In our parallel universe, that's like one of the biggest hit songs.
Oh, that's number 1 for 10 weeks. Yeah, no, love that song. It's funny as hell, but it rocks too.
It's the most sweetly catchy, beautiful pop song ever written about taking LSD.
Yes, yeah, it is an ode to drugs to the nth degree, and it's lovely. It's wonderful.
Yeah, Ride Your Heart from 2013. That's the first album to get. Then get Welcome the Worms from 2016. And their last album from 2 years ago is really good too. Don't You Think You've Had Enough? But Ride Your Heart and Welcome the Worms, those are the 2 you need to get. Fantastic band, great albums, really.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I really don't understand how they're not stars now, given some of the stuff that's been pushed out there. 2 good-looking blondes from L.A. that are doing this throwback to the early 80s. It's
stunning to me how much better they are than Haim, and yet Haim gets all the publicity.
Oh, I know. Well, the thing is, Haim.
All right.
So
number 17 on the list, and before we get to it, Chris, you're gonna tell us who this person is. Before anything, this person is now a transgender person.
Yes.
So we cannot refer to this person as a he anymore.
Yes, I know. This is the first instance of a they in the history of the Curmudgeon Rock Report. And so we're talking about Ezra Furman. Behold the wonder of gender dysphoria here, and to a transgender woman named Ezra. It has not changed their name. And so really, I mean, androgynous electro fuzz rock is alive and well here in 2021, thanks to Furman's confessional musings and their oscillations between trad new wave and more orthodox early 90s British pop. Think of bands like James. I hear some James in there. And I especially
do you know what I hear? You know what
What's
I
that?
hear with Ezra Furman? To me, a lot of his that insanely catchy rock and roll that he does,
Oh yeah,
it owes a lot to Lou Reed, the Kinks, Blondie, doo-wop,
yeah,
and a little bit of Green Day, believe it or not.
yeah.
His last album, 12 Nudes from 2019,
Which great
very
record.
very punk pop, or
Yeah,
pop.
yeah. Like I said, it's very sort of it's like that sort of pop punk, the sort of the anthemic, sort of break free from the oppressor or the battle the man kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
I don't know, is it battle the they? I don't know.
yeah.
But and I was going to say, so with Furman, I especially enjoy their song "Evening Prayer," aka "Justice."
Yeah.
From 2019's cheekily titled album 12 Nudes.
Yeah.
It's a song that has male swagger on the one hand and female lib on the other. It's a truly universal freedom anthem. Now, to crib a lyric from that song, quote, "If you've got the taste for transcendence that translates your love into action," unquote, then you'll probably like Ezra Furman's stuff as much as we do. Arturo,
their masterpiece is 2015's Perpetual Motion People. That's one of the best albums of the decade. The influences that I mentioned, throw in a little bit of Bruce Springsteen in there, because he does have that Springsteen tendency for these these like really highly emotional epic storytelling songs.
Yeah, he really does.
He does that a lot.
Or they do that a lot.
They do that a lot. Yeah.
We got to get used to this pronoun world, folks.
Yeah. It's just catchy, no bullshit. Especially the last album, 12 Nudes, catchy, no bullshit, emotionally raw and rocking with epic widescreen evoking lyrics.
Yeah,
and it's like the LGBT community finally has its own answer to Bruce Springsteen, and it's Ezra Furman.
Go figure. I mean, the guy, the person. Writes really strong anthemic stuff. It's fun but profound lyrics.
Absolutely,
So.
Ezra, I've been a big Ezra fan for a while now, so I'm glad that their curmudgeons are giving them some shine. Now we move on to number 16, and now we can safely call this person a she.
Yes,
Chris, take it away.
She's very she. We are talking about Waxahachie.
Right.
Oh, what a songstress.
Yes.
Waxahachie is the nom de plume of Katie Crutchfield, a gifted singer-songwriter from Alabama, Waxahachie Creek, Alabama, to be exact. Now, faithful Curmudgeon Rock Report listeners will remember that Arturo talked up Ms. Crutchfield in a Parallel Universe segment a few weeks back. Now, since then, I have become similarly familiar with the 2020 Waxahachie record, St. Cloud. It is a gorgeous collection of love songs and laments that I think springs from a recipe that includes 1 part Lucinda, 1 part REM, one part Jayhawks, and I even found 1 part Dolly Parton. Lovely, and then even more lovely. It's an accomplishment, and in retrospect is probably the 2020 the best rock pop album I've heard from 2020, or at least the best one I've heard so far. I mean, who knows? Maybe I missed a spot or two. So there you go. Go fall in love with Katie Crutchfield too. Yeah,
she's a under fucking rated songwriter.
Way underrated. Yeah,
she's
beautiful voice. She really a master of that. I don't know what you would call it, but that sort of definitely Southern informed sound.
Yeah,
it's not really country rock. She rocks the mandolin sometimes, and it doesn't rock, but it's not sappy either. It's genuine.
Right.
I think it's a good word for her.
Yes, St. Cloud actually is a change in direction for her. That's where she got in touch with her inner Lucinda Williams in that record.
Yeah.
Her earlier stuff is more like 90s influenced indie rock.
Yeah, I agree.
Her best album, I think, is from 2013, Cerulean Salt. Very strong Liz Phair influence. On that album.
Like you said, that's more in your face. Whereas this is lovely. that's more in your face.
Yeah,
for
so
sure.
definitely. And the 2015 album, Ivy Trip, really, really good too. So yeah,
Mhm.
Waxahachie is awesome.
Yes.
Okay, number 15. Here we go. Another awesome band. And this is more of a band. It's not one person.
Yeah. There you go.
This is, if there ever was a curmudgeonly parallel universe band, Parquet Courts are that band.
Yes.
Seriously, put these guys in a time machine, take them back to the 1990s, and they would be all over alternative rock radio alongside Weezer and Beck.
Oh yeah, totally. They're right there in that sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah. As it is, I'll just describe their sound as this. Basically, Pavement gets into a time machine and travels back to the 1970s, hangs out with the CBGB's punk scene, particularly the television, Richard Hell, Talking Heads strand of that scene, and have some bastard offspring. That offspring would sound like Parquet Courts.
Yep.
Now, they originally hail from, I believe, Austin, Texas, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, they're more Dallas area. They University of
Dallas. Okay.
Yeah, University of North Texas, which is
It's in Denton. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, with the home of the Von Erichs.
Yep. They now reside in New York City and have for a
Yes.
while,
Mhm.
and since the beginning of the teens, and they've released a string of terrific, quirky, weird ass, smart ass, eclectic, highly literate indie rock.
Yeah.
The best of the bunch, in my opinion, is Human Performance from 2016. Their most recent album, 2018's Wide Awake, has the closest thing they've had to a hit with the title track. They even performed that song when they appeared on Ellen DeGeneres' daytime talk show as a musical guest.
Oh, I didn't know
You
that.
look it up on YouTube. And the Curmudgeons cannot wait until their new album, A Sympathy for Life, comes out later in October.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I actually was a big fan of a couple of their earlier records, like Light Up Gold and Someday Animal, and
those are really
stuff
good
like that.
records too. Yeah,
Yeah,
those are really
no,
good.
you're right. They are kind of like, to me, to kind of riff on an earlier joke. What if Stephen Malkmus was tolerable? That's the Parquet Courts. They're a great band, and like Arturo said, that they're
Steven, if you're listening, I'm a huge Pavement fan. I'm a huge fan of yous. So
I know he wishes he was female so that he can fuck you. But anyway, Parquet Courts, they fit that Gen X aesthetic to a T, which is interesting because, as far as I know, they're a little bit younger than that, but they definitely studied the canon, for sure. And so, they've been pretty celebrated band for a while, and I know they've gotten some love. Not even the underground, not even just the Uncuts and the Stereo Gums and all that, but the a little bit more upstream, like the Mojos and the Rolling Stones have given them.
But you'll never hear them on the radio.
You will never hear them on the radio, which is too bad because almost everything they do is ready-made for the radio. So great band, very good band. So go check them out. They're probably, to be honest with you, of all the bands on this list, they probably are the most well-known. If there was, them and there's another female artist down list that are probably the two most prominent to the would-be hipster out there.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
Now the next band, Chris, band I like quite a bit. You take it.
Yeah, me too. We're talking about the War on Drugs, and this
Philadelphia, Chapter 2.
Yes, this is the second entry to the Philadelphia Songcraft trilogy, following Steve Gunn. So now, I'm not sure if the War on Drugs is the best band on this list, but I do think that the War on Drugs, despite their jokey, in-your-face name, is the gentlest band that we're talking about on this episode.
Yeah.
Now, by gentlest, I don't mean lightest or wussiest, but I'm talking about gentlest in the best sense of the term, as in gentle strength, gentle confidence, gentle plaintiveness and assertiveness. So we're talking about thoughtful, emotive, contemplative, and intense stuff, and driven by impressive touches like echoing pianos and skittering electronic drum touches and the band leader, Adam Granducio's depressive but often pretty vocals. I'm also pretty sure that Granducio is the best lyricist on our list of contemporary rock titans, or at least would be my pick.
I think Kurt Weill's still a better lyricist, though. I think he's clever. He's a little more clever.
Well, he's more clever, and so he's a better word guy. But in terms of what he accomplishes and sort of the writing, how to write a song, I will say this: I think it's a near dead heat between him and a female artist later down on our list. I think he wins it by a nose. For me. And so, for instance, there's the lead track off of 2017's A Deeper Understanding, Up All Night. Great song, which, believe it or not, by the way, A Deeper Understanding won the Grammy for Best Rock Album in 2017.
And won a Grammy.
Yeah, go figure.
But you'll never hear the War on Drugs on the radio.
No, this is your band on drugs. But anyway, that song Up All Night, it really magically captures the experience of being up all night, which I was actually 3 days ago. When, in that sense where your emotions swirl from one drama to another, often in leaps and fits that don't make much logical sense. He's been up all night, and as his lyric explains, spinning around the floor, it's not some feeling I can break. Sound familiar? Really, so the War on Drugs was founded by Granducio, and here's Kurt Weill again, back in 2008. Weill hung around long enough for the band's 2008 debut, Wagon Wheel Blues, before departing. I still probably think that's their best record.
Really?
But,
wow.
Yeah, I would say it's between that and A Deeper Understanding. I think that 2014 record's pretty strong too.
That's the breakthrough. That's the one.
The lead track on that album, even though the lead bit, the weird skittering thing, doesn't make the radio. That was their big radio thing, or at least got my station in upstate or just north of New York used to play that song a lot. But
is it Under the Pressure? Is that the song?
Under the Pressure. Yeah, that's kind of what got them their 15 minutes there back in 2014. But anyway, Wagon Wheel Blues. It's weird because it is Kurt Weill and Granducio, who are a couple of songwriting titans. But I think it's fair to say that in spirit and personality, I think that band was still Granducio's baby then. Because sure, Weill and Granducio come from that same Tom Petty informed school of pop songcraft. But while Weill is the too cool stoner, Granducio is the what you see is what you get quiet guy lost in space as he plays on his piano or sings. Weill ain't gentle. But for the most part, Wagon Wheel Blues is. And that's really a consistent strand through the War on Drugs' catalog. Hence ends part 2 of the Philadelphia trilogy.
Yeah. I like to say that Lost in the Dream from 2014, I think is their best album. And the other one that's really the one that kind of got them noticed in the underground music press was Slave Ambient from 2011.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic record as well. I would describe the War on Drugs, if I had to put it in simple terms, it's basically heartland Americana rock like Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty put through a slightly psychedelic indie rock filter.
He definitely. There's just this sort of, again, kind of Lonesome Echo kind of thing that they're in, but it's more sort of an indie rock aesthetic, but like you said, there's an earnestness and a longing in the lyrics. And again, Granducio is one of these guys that in 2014, 2017, a lot of the stuff comes from his experiences with depression and relationship ups and downs. He's definitely a born introvert, or at least his lyrics would tell you that he's a born introvert. So,
and one last thing about Lost in the Dream, which now is kind of a modern classic. Passes the green test with flying colors.
I can imagine. I can imagine all that, like the echoey stuff, like the piano stuff and all that. Not only that, but the tempo. It is like an oddly woozy tempo,
Yeah.
And so
I specialize in that.
Yeah, no. So definitely the War on Drugs. Again, Granducio gets my vote by a nose for best lyricist on this list. So
cool.
There you go.
All right, now a band that I think lyrically is up there as well. The number 13 band on this list, one of my favorite bands of the past decade. And I think they're called The Men. And simple name, kind of a dumb name, but they are one of the most consistently brilliant and unpredictably versatile and eclectic bands of the last decade. And they're from Brooklyn. They're from Brooklyn, New York. That the hipster enclave of Brooklyn. But they themselves are not really hipsters, especially if you listen to their music.
Yeah.
They kind of blasted their way to underground indie rock notoriety with back-to-back punches of 2011's Leave Home and 2012's Open Your Heart. Basically, it's just gut-punchingly heavy and rocking post-punk, post-hardcore noise rock, and they all merge into a concoction that, if you had to play a game of Spot the Influence, kind of resembles At the Drive-In meets Husker Du.
Yeah.
With Lightning Bolt as producers.
Yeah. There's definitely a little bit of Lightning Bolt touch in there with these guys.
But definitely Husker Du a lot, and At the Drive-In if you're into that.
Yeah.
That emo, the harder edge of emo.
Yes.
Their greatest moment on record, however, is the startlingly awesome and awe-inspiring New Moon from 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some critics and fans were disappointed by how the band went away from that, super abrasive, razor shredding sound of before. But this particular curmudgeon thinks they improved on their formula by introducing mature and much improved songwriting to the mix. One writer, one music journalist, referred to the album as Dinosaur Jr. on a serious Tom Petty kick.
Yeah,
I like to refer to New Moon, their album from 2013, as the Replacements come to terms with Husker Du, sprinkled with a little REM sweet dust on top.
Yeah.
New Moon to me is one of the 10 greatest rock albums of the 2010s, if not one of the greatest albums of the decade. Period. Greatest albums of any genre. In the middle of the decade, the Men changed their sound further. They started to embrace Americana sounds such as blues, country, and folk. And they produced something akin to like down-home bar band music. Mixed results were evident with 2014's Tomorrow's Hits. But the experiment came to fruition with the beautiful pastoral sounds of 2018's Drift and last year's album Mercy. They haven't fully abandoned the punked out aggro rock of their early years.
Yeah.
Songs of that ilk are sprinkled throughout their latter albums, but their brave embracing of roots music and continued focus on songcraft have resulted, I think, in one of the richest, most fulfilling discographies of any contemporary rock band. So check out The Men. All their albums.
No, that's fair. They've kind of gotten closer to kind of some Grateful Dead kind of vibe, and like you said, sort of Americana down home kind of stuff. But my favorite thing with the Men still is I love their song Animal, which has let's just put it this way: look, nothing will ever touch Alex Van Halen's intro to Hot for Teacher as far as drum majesty. But Animal comes pretty close. It's their most fun song. It's just like, okay, yeah, these guys, they might not have been like the Brooklyn scenester type of things, but you could tell that they had that sort of Brooklyn smart boy wink wink fun. That obviously they were probably drinking a little bit when they recorded this record and all of that. So, but like you've said, that there's a maturity and an eclectic that has grown with them since then. So,
speaking of maturity, the next band, number 12 on the list, deserves an asterisk because they've been around for a really long time.
Yes, which I will discuss.
Yes.
So we're talking about Lightning Bolt, and Lightning Bolt. So here's my thing on them. So my first interaction with Lightning Bolt, as well as a lot of people's first interaction with Lightning Bolt, goes back to 2003 with the album Wonderful Rainbow. Yeah. And my first thought back then was, what a wacky ass band. Now, they fell off my radar for a while as I, grew up and, went to law school and went in my 30s and 40s and wasn't quite as cool. But I came back around to them in 2019 with the album Sonic Citadel. And my first thought then, what a wacky ass band. But wait, that's not quite the same wacky ass band, is it? Actually, yes, it is. Lightning Bolt has arguably been the best wacky ass band in the world for a long, 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 long time. And Wonderful Rainbow has deservedly become a cult classic. Allmusic.com, which is not normally the source for good, sharp, funny writing, has a great line about Wonderful Rainbow. Imagine all of the best aspects of Fred Frith, Derek Bailey, The Ruins, Slayer, and Ornette Coleman all thrown into a blender together. Then imagine them on speed. This one's a keeper. Now, AllMusic points out the oddest thing about Sonic Citadel, too. It contains, quote-unquote, an extremely uncharacteristic melody or two, rising above the clamor.
Yeah.
Which is true. Now, USA is Psycho does sound like it could have been scooped off the cutting room floor from Black Sabbath's self-titled debut. But hey, who really needs melody when you can make wild-ass art rock workouts like these? Now, here's the main thing I think about Lightning Bolt. If you don't actually listen to their music and are a lazy thinker in general, you'll immediately think that this band sucks. But if you have any level of curiosity or the natural ability to be puzzled, you will probably want to start listening, like really listening to these guys on second play, and then listen again and again and again and again. And remarkably, and it still blows me away, this is only two guys doing all this.
Yeah.
And it's a continuation in a long line of illustrious Rhode Island School of Design minted oddballs. It's brilliantly crafted fuzz and drum that relentlessly goes all over the place. And just, it's like a drill bit in your brain, but one that is got a soothing effect as opposed to an ouch. And so how the hell are they doing all that, really? But, who cares? Again, just shut up and listen and never stop appreciating Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, I refer to them as thrash metal jazz.
Pretty
That's
much
basically what they are. Because there's a heavy jazz element in what they do, but it's just rocked the fuck out.
Yeah, and I would venture to say that if you were to make a list of all-time greatest headphone records, Wonderful Rainbow is probably top 50, maybe top 25.
Thing is, they have better albums than that.
I know, but the thing, it's my favorite. I mean, I like Sonic Citadel was up there too, but Wonderful Rainbow is just like it's intense and it's just, but it's clever and it's subtle.
You really need to listen to Fantasy Empire from 2015. Mm-hmm. That, in my opinion, is their masterpiece. Mm-hmm. That's their greatest work, one of the best albums of the decade. And what separates that album from other Lightning Bolt albums is that this one has more conventional metal riffage into it, more than any of their other records. There are hints of melody, but it's got their most conventional heavy metal riffs mixed in with that, cacophonous noise that they do. Yeah. And it's got some of the funnier, song titles. The Metal East, Snow White and the Seven Dwarves Fans.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's funny. But like I said, the thing about Wonderful Rainbow, and again, I haven't spent as much time with Sonic Citadel. Wonderful Rainbow is one of those things, like you said, it has the cacophony and the inertia and the sort of the mess. But if you listen to it on the headphones and you grab onto the riff, and then you not only the riff, but when you catch on to the groove and you kind of get yourself mentally in that center, boy. I mean, and those guys are brilliant.
Earthly Delights from 2009 has a song on it called "The Sublime Freak." It may be their greatest moment on record. They're their greatest song. So it's just that one song from 2009. You should check that out. Yeah. Lightning Bolt have been they've been one of the world's best bands for like 15 years now.
Yeah. Longer than that, really, almost 20. So it's, I know that Arturo's been a more enthusiastic follower of theirs over the years. But again, one of the joys of this podcast is being able to loop back around to some of this stuff that goes back to really the sweet spot of an old career of mine when I was in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was covering a lot of this stuff. and being able to, because I was into that White and Gold record for a while, but I never really meditated with it on headphones back then because, I was a dumbass 28-year-old. But
Right.
But anyway, they're probably the oldest band on this list, but they're still one of the best.
Absolutely. And next, number 11, another American band, one of my favorite bands of the moment right now, Flatworms from the LA area. Now, I've already mentioned quite a bit about this band several episodes ago when I reviewed their excellent album from last year, Antarctica, in our Parallel Universe segment. I'll just add that as awesome as that album is, their self-titled debut from 2017 is even better. Their Sebadoh meets the Wipers hybrid is produced here in a very raw, very lo-fi way with a sonic, youthish wall of noisy guitar sound. These guys can also write insanely catchy songs with sharp, funny, detached observations ranging from mundane, everyday life occurrences to even insightful socio-political commentary. They're easily one of the best American bands on the planet and definitely worth following.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They write really great songs, but they also can bash too. They're they're definitely kind of we're a young American band in at the turn of the 10s and 20s kind of group, and I'm enthusiastic about them, but not quite as. So this second half, this bottom half of this list is great, but it's kind of like it really accelerates in the first half, which we will get to shortly.
On this episode, the Curmudgeons did a positively positive survey on all the great modern rock bands and artists who would be superstars in a better parallel universe version of Earth. For the next episode, join us as we venture back to our familiar universe and resume our ongoing series that analyzes the fascinatingly parallel careers of Prince and Michael Jackson. In this second chapter / installment, Michael's fame blows up to supernova proportions with the album Thriller, and the aftermath will go on to define him and his career for the rest of his life, for better and unfortunately for much worse. Prince goes supernova himself with the blockbuster albums 1999 and Purple Rain. He becomes a Hollywood movie star with not one, but 2 major motion pictures, and he begins the non-stop recording output that would define him for the rest of his life.
All right, now the number 10 band on our list of the best modern rock bands is the band that made death metal beautiful. Chris?
Yeah, pretty much. This is Deafheaven. And I suspect that even if you're just a casual kind of fan of rock coming to our this year Rock Nerd podcast, you've probably heard of Deafheaven because they had their moment in the sun in 2013. Quote, "It's 5 a.m. and my heart flourishes at each passing moment." As does that lyric, so does Deafheaven. Deafheaven's Sunbather from 2013 is probably one of the 10 best rock records released since 2000. It's also the greatest trick that death metal, or something disguised as death metal, has ever pulled. These guys have mastered the art of shaping beauty under the pretense of ugly. Even at full steam, the dense walls of guitar, the blasting drums, and the blood-curdling screams pummel their way into something that becomes solemn and gorgeous across repeated listens. Now, that in turn makes the actual softer, quieter, more lush interludes truly astonishing when they arrive. The lead guitar work strikingly has some genuine Duane Allman-style soul to it at times. And then when the rapid-fire rebashing restarts, it all becomes even more astonishing, and so on. Depending on the day and my mood, I sometimes think Deafheaven does the My Bloody Valentine woozy thing better than My Bloody Valentine. You don't often hear a death metal band get compared to My Bloody Valentine, but that's kind of how special Deafheaven is. Now, Slayer may have effectively created death metal as we know it, but no one has taken it as far into the visceral and the honest quite as much as Deafheaven. Sunbather got a lot of mainstream rock press attention when it was released. Maybe you remember that. Even folks that weren't really programmed to gush in the rock press were gushing over that record, and so you remember that, but you may not realize that the band is still going strong. Now, in 2020, they released an album called 10 Years Gone. Now, when the advent of COVID meant that they could not tour.
It's a quote unquote album. It's not really part of their discography, though.
Yeah, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, here it is. Here's the thing. So when the advent of COVID happened and they couldn't tour, so Deafheaven responded. Now, remember, they're a California band. So they responded by entering the studio, and they were performing all of the songs that they planned on either debuting or reintroducing on tour. And they did so, from what I understand, in one sitting. And so what you're getting is a live record, recorded, and then just cleaned up. And again, they're sitting in the studio, and it's basically not a jam. It's like them playing like they had been rehearsing it for weeks. So in case you were wondering whether Sunbather was a result of pure studio magic, it was not. These guys really are that good and really in touch with all those mixed darker side emotions. I'd say check that out. But especially if you haven't heard it in a long time, go back and listen to Sunbather. That's a special record.
Yeah, Sunbather from 2013. That is the first. You could argue that's the first unique thing that's come out in rock music, or the most unique thing to come out since Radiohead. It's when Radiohead put out OK Computer, that was an event. You know, Sunbather was kind of like that for heavy metal.
Yeah,
there's never been metal that sounded like this before. New Bermuda from 2015 is really, really good too. That's a great record as well.
Yeah. Like I said, no, they're a great band, but like I said, Deafheaven is just this shining monument to the possibilities of rock and roll. And it's like one of those what would you call it? Like a monolith moment. You know, the monkeys touch the monolith and everything's different. Sunbather's one of those records. So.
Absolutely. All right. Now we move on to number 9. The number 9 best modern rock band / artist. They're called, and many of you know because they're kind of big in the underground now, the Osees. They go by just Osees now, Osees. Now, I put an asterisk next to this band's inclusion because John Dwyer, the lead singer, guitarist, songwriter, and overall band linchpin, is actually 2 years older than both of us curmudgeons. Calling them modern or contemporary is a bit inaccurate.
Yes.
As Dwyer has been around for a long time.
Yeah, the Osees they're kind of like a lightning bolt, but they might even go back longer than that, right?
Yeah. Calling them modern or contemporary would be like calling Queens of the Stone Age modern or contemporary, you know. However, since 2013, Dwyer and Osees have been on a super hot streak of great albums. Honestly, the best music Dwyer has done since he started out in the early noughties. And that I'll include them on this list of great modern bands who should be on rock radio. Hell, I mean, they're the Osees' recent music is, and that music being good is more than I can say for anything Josh Homme and Queens of the Stone Age have done recently. The Osees,
True statement.
Yeah, Homme hasn't done anything good in a long time. Anyway, the Osees as a band have an insanely prolific output. I would argue too prolific. Of about 30 albums they've released that Dwyer has overseen since 2006. What started out and continued for several years as a long run of charmingly lo-fi, quirky, rambling, ramshackle garage punk has mutated into this raging, snarling rock monster. Starting with 2013's fantastic Floating Coffin, still my favorite Osees album. Osees have been for literally every year since writing a string of ambitious maximum rock and roll albums that encapsulate garage rock, surf rock, psychedelic rock, punk rock, heavy metal, krautrock, jazz, prog rock, and even electronic pop. Unfortunately, it's hard to keep track with OC's flood of releases since, along with the studio albums, Dwyer has issued several live albums, albums of covers, and outtakes, and experimental instrumental music, all under the OC's name. Fortunately, though, you have the Curmudgeon Rock Report to help you filter out what proper OC studio albums you need. And we've whittled them down to 8. Are you ready to write these down? Chris, you ready to write these down?
Yes, please.
Okay, here we go. Floating Coffin from 2013.
Good record.
Drop from 2014. Mutilator Defeated at Last from 2015.
Good record.
A Weird Exits from 2016. Orc from 2017, the least good of these albums.
Yeah, I was going to say that one's I don't know.
That was not that great. But the next 3 are really good. Smote Reverser from 2018. The double album, Face Stabber, I love that album title, from 2019. And last year's Protein Threat from 2020. There. Aren't you listeners out there glad you have the Curmudgeons in your life?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because, here in this top half of this list, there's probably 3 acts that are guilty of the splatter approach to discography and putting it out there. And like I said, more does not always equal better. But the thing about some of these bands is that, they'll kind of go up and down, but the best of the best of the best is really that good. And so we appreciate the prolificness, but again, it's kind of like, cleaning out the monkey cage. You have to get rid of the shit at the bottom to truly appreciate the animal. Yeah.
And you have to do that with the OCs for sure.
Absolutely.
So speaking of bands that aren't prolific and really have good quality control.
Yes.
Number 8.
Yeah. This is one of those bands that has perhaps the best quality among the best quality control on this list. We're talking about METZ. No, not the New York baseball team. METZ. METZ. Now, this is another band that Arturo covered in a Parallel Universe segment on an earlier episode of the Curmudgeon Rock Report. So here's my best quick take on METZ. Loud. Louder.
Loudest.
Okay, so hopefully I just didn't wake up my wife. Anyway, so METZ is not the most chaotic band on our Magic list. That honor probably goes to either Lightning Bolt or another of our entries closer to number 1. But I'm pretty sure these Ontario natives comprise the loudest band. They're the hard rock equivalent of a Demolition Crew. When they tear down the buildings, you feel it in your soul and, of course, in your eardrums. Awesome power, awesome shouting, relentless guitar squonks, squeals, and screeches. Arturo covered this year's Atlas Vending in that Parallel Universe segment I mentioned. I commented at the time it reminded me of an old "And You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead" thing, and kind of like what I said with Lightning Bolt. And then I listened to it more closely, and there went that comparison. There's actually some pretty damn good songs underneath all of this noise. Atlas Vending might be their best record. I mean, it's kind of on par with the debut, which just has a purity to it that, obviously that kind of indie spirit. And they're on Sub Pop, and so there's a lineage there. Arturo will tell a story here when he talks about this. But my favorite METZ volley is probably the 2012 B-side, Leave Me Out, which is this gnarly, grinding blast-off that honors the spirit of Bleach-era Nirvana. Like I said, they're in the Sub Pop lineage, and it kind of shows. Remember that this band is from Ottawa, Ontario, but they carry the ball forward for the Seattle thing very, very well. So,
yeah, METZ. Man, they're currently based in Toronto,
Yes.
They're originally from Ottawa, but they all live in Toronto now. I would, if people were asking me and have never heard METZ, my very quick, simple description would be Bleach era Nirvana meets the Jesus Lizard. That's basically how I would describe
That's
them.
pretty good,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, they're balls to the wall. Their self-titled debut album from 2012 is one of the best rock albums of the decade. Their second album, Roman numeral 2, is called 2, from 2015, is fantastic as well. Yeah, the story, the funny story, I don't know if it's true or not, but I read about it, that Mojo back in 2013, I think we're doing a story about Sub Pop, and for their free CD sampler they include in every issue, they're doing like a sampler of Sub Pop bands and artists, right? 15 Sub Pop bands and artists for their CD that they give away for free with their magazine. And when Jonathan Poneman, who still works at Sub Pop, by the
Yes,
way,
he does.
he's still the main guy there. He found out that METZ, he's such a huge fan of METZ. He found out that METZ weren't on the Sub Pop sampler that Mojo devised, and he got really pissed off and threatened to not talk to Mojo ever again and to withdraw all the artists' interviews with them if they don't put METZ in the sampler. So Mojo had to relent, and true to form, Mojo has been covering METZ ever since.
Yep.
And they should. They're one of the best bands in the world.
I mean, they had to get punked into it, but they really are. I mean, they among that kind of noise, that kind of loud rock. Again, they're just a pile driver.
They really are.
But they're very good at it. So.
Can you imagine a tour with them and Lightning Bolt?
Yeah. I was going to say I'd have to walk out halfway through just for my own health. And safety. I think you'd have to be about 16 to get through that whole show in one piece. So there you go. And so now we go the exact. Well, I would call it the exact opposite of METZ, but we go from one shtick extreme to another shtick extreme.
Yes. Number 7, Sleaford mods. While this is the lone British entry in our list, they are probably the most important and relevant band on this list from a socio-political perspective.
Yeah.
Now, I've spoken at length about these guys on a previous episode of this podcast when I reviewed their most recent album, came out this year, the terrific Spare Ribs. Now, I'll describe them briefly, though, to those who haven't and should listen to them. Who are Sleaford mods? 2 dudes. One dude delivers funky, minimalist, bass-driven electro beats using only his laptop.
Yep.
Another dude delivers not quite sung, not quite rapped verbal assaults in his thick Cockney accent that targets racism, xenophobia, socioeconomic disparity, the shrinking working and middle classes, the rise of corporate fascism, society's obsession with social media, society's obsession with vapid celebrity culture, the phoniness of the music business, pretentious hipster culture, and everything else in between, with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
So,
unlike that chick from dry cleaning, that dude has an intentional poetry that he builds into his monologia, for sure.
Yeah, and he's smart lyrics, cleverly written. So, which Sleaford mods album should you listen to?
Spare Ribs.
Fucking all of them, you wankers.
There you go. Yeah, that was actually perfect. Yeah, look, one of the great things of rock, and this is actually a good opportunity to bring up another one of the curmudgeonly worldview tenets, which is dumb is not the same thing as bad.
Right.
And just remember, they're not that dumb, really not that dumb. But what I mean by that is they clearly have a shtick, but it's a very, very good, very smart, very clever shtick, which is the Cockney monologia over the Casio beats, the homemade Casio beats. And it's got an oddly hypnotic effect. I would venture to guess, and again, I'm retired from that, but I imagine that they green test awfully well.
I haven't tried it with them, but I'd like to one day.
Yeah, because I really like that kind of spoken, this kind of stuff. Like I remember like Saul Williams records, which, Saul Williams isn't so much a rapper as he is a poet. And so that kind of stuff always worked for me in my green test days. So anyway, that was my endorsement for the legalization of marijuana in this episode of the Curmudgeon Rock Report. And again, like I said, these days I'm pretty much a teetotaler, but my wife and I do live across the street from the local drug dealers. So if I ever, let's just put it this way, if she ever has a bout of nausea, like she did again this week, I may just go across the street. And Arturo, come visit me.
Yes. And speaking of marijuana, the next band on our list, number 6.
Yes. Any band that names their band King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard probably has marijuana somewhere in their apartment. So anyway, we are talking about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, which has become kind of a trend. Like literally, this is a trend now because this is the third time in the 6 months of the history of this podcast that I'm talking about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. And that still doesn't make me as prolific as the actual King Gizzard, which so far in its existence here in the 2010 and beyond has arguably had the best quality control among the era's high output rock bands. We just talked about the Osees. There's this one, and then we're going to talk about another one at the very top of this list.
Yep.
So anyway, I would say that King Gizzard is a unique gift to the modern rock world because I don't think you can't describe them or their sound in 5 words or less. Here's the best summary I can give. This band can do whatever the hell it wants and do it credibly. And most of the time, they execute their experiments and shifts in personality very, very well. In 2021, they have released the very good LW, a purposefully microtonal prog romp, and the pretty good and clever Butterfly 3000. I know you hate it, but I like it. A synth-driven bubblegum pop concept record about out-of-body experiences and floating on clouds and other ethereal shit. I guess emphasis on shit if you're in Arturo's camp, not mine. Anyway, they haven't been truly great since 2019's ecology-themed thrash metal record, Infest the Rat's Nest.
Fantastic album.
Yeah, I love it, which, believe it or not, was 6 albums ago at this point. Even so, Stu McKenzie is one of the most interesting, prolific, and talented band leaders in the world. And King Gizzard's brand of weirdness is one worth investing in here in this modern era. Your thoughts briefly, Arturo?
Yeah, I mean, they have such a huge discography. They started out as just this raggedy garage punk band. Then they became a raggedy garage punk band with heavy psychedelic elements. Then they evolved into a straight up psychedelic rock band. Then they started to incorporate elements of 70s German rock. I hate to use the word krautrock. It's a horrible word, but I guess, elements of that into their music. And then they they incorporate that with later other records of kind of acoustic jazz pop.
Yeah.
They have elements of that folky jazz pop. Then they went into what else? Then they went to the microtonal period.
Yeah,
of the Middle Eastern sounding guitars that were kind of psychedelic, but more in the realm of prog rock. Then they did their thrash metal excursion, which oddly enough is their best album to date. And then they went back to the microtonal Middle Eastern sounding prog rock guitars.
Yeah.
And now they're doing, third-rate Kraftwerk shitty electronic pop.
Let's see what they do for you in my dreams. Yeah. Yeah. Which actually, I mean, I said I like that record. I think it's clever because look, the music fits the lyrical concept. You can't say that it's not inappropriate, Or it isn't inappropriate, that's for sure. So I enjoy King Gizzard, and I guess
I love King Gizzard too. I just wish they would have more quality control.
Yeah, I guess in the division of labor here in producing and writing and preparing the Curmudgeon Rock Report, I'm going to get the King Gizzard workload. I've pretty much established that. Again, this is the third time in about the last 7 or 8 episodes that I've
You're officially the King Gizzard guy on this
Yeah,
podcast.
I was going to say I'm like the Stu McKenzie quote unquote fanboy. Go figure. So from there, we go from ugly guys from Australia to prodigiously talented, pretty blondes from America.
Yeah. Well, she's not really a blonde; she's a brunette. But anyway.
Okay. Well, multi hair. It goes in and
Yeah.
out. She's blonde now these days.
Yeah. Number 5, Saint Vincent. Now, another asterisk must go here simply because Saint Vincent, aka Annie Clark, is already a bona fide star.
Yes.
She's been on the covers of magazines. She's won Grammy Awards, I think.
Yes. She's the other Grammy winner on this.
Yeah,
on this list.
she's performed at the Grammys. Then why the hell don't you ever hear Saint Vincent on the radio?
Yeah, I know. It's like she's like a star to the intelligentsia.
Yeah.
But yeah, you think she would be like this mainstream pinup, or you know what I'm saying? That the little girls, like the little 8-year-olds, you think she'd be like as revered as Madonna or Cyndi Lauper were in 1984.
Or Taylor Swift.
Or Taylor Swift, actually.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, didn't St. Vincent work with Taylor Swift for a little bit?
She may have. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
But
anyway, go ahead.
Her not being on the radio is exactly what qualifies her for being on the Curmudgeons parallel universe list of bands, artists who should be bigger than they are and would be in our parallel universe rock radio station. Be honest, I'll be honest here. I'm not a fan of her early work. Her output from the noughties to the early teens just sounds to me like glorified, sappy Disney show tune crap. However, I believe the turning point came in her 2013 collaborative album with David Byrne.
Yeah, I agree.
Loved this giant. After this album, it seemed St. Vincent realized, hey, it's okay to have pop hooks and catchy melodies and get funky and do some and really finally show off some of her rock guitar chops.
Yeah, she's a brilliant guitarist. Actually, she understated, but she's really good.
Yeah. Her self-titled album from 2014 was not only her breakthrough record,
masterpiece.
It's also one of the best albums of the decade.
Yeah, the last 20 years, really. It's brilliant.
Yeah. It's angular yet funky, emotionally sincere yet ironically distant in parts. It is an art rock classic for those mourning the loss of David Bowie.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly and admittedly one of Annie Clark's absolute heroes.
Yeah.
And you can hear it. She followed that up with 2017's Mass Seduction, a very good, dark, heavy electro pop workout that delves into toxic relationships, drug addiction, and her struggles with her newfound fame.
Yes.
Her most recent album, as Chris covered in a few episodes ago, Daddy's Home, came out this year and was was reviewed by you, Chris, and it is a rich, lush, decadent 1970s influenced production that lovingly recalls Steely Dan, Stevie Wonder, solo John Lennon, and of course David Bowie.
Yeah, and I was going to say Bowie's Thin White Duke. The Thin White Duke period there.
Yeah,
the Young Americans stuff.
Again, why doesn't this woman get radio airplay?
I don't understand it. But it's interesting though because she got magazine articles and like Vanity Fair and some of the mainstream. I think the Atlantic. She got a lot of press and photos and all that, like prominent. So. I think very casual rock fans probably know who she is. And like you said, I like Daddy's Home. I mean, I got the cover.
I like it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's essentially a concept record about one not only accepting fame and growing up, but also about her father who spent like a decade in prison for like being some sort of Wall Street fraudster. And so this idea of getting over the bitterness of that whole thing. It's interesting. St. Vincent has this. She's got the gift of being simultaneously raw but sly.
Yeah,
she can be very sly and very dry while still being raw in terms of her voice and persona and those types of things. She's an interesting cat.
So from one interesting female rocker to another.
Yeah.
Number 4 on our
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, this is about as rock and roll as it gets. This is Amyl and the Sniffers.
Is it Amyl or Amyl?
It's Amyl.
It's Amyl.
I say an Amyl. It's probably Amyl or Amyl. I know it refers to substances. It's
amyl nitrate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it should be Amyl, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So Amyl and the Sniffers. I only say Amyl because, well, one, I've never actually heard the substance, the huffer substance said out loud. Yeah. But we're talking about a band fronted by some woman named Amy. So
Amy Taylor.
Yeah, there you go. So here's my take on Amyl, they, them, he, she, it. Anyway, this is my take on this band. I know a lot of people who think that rock without balls isn't really rock at all. Arturo may be one of those people, and they live it like they listen to it. Amy Taylor is also clearly one of these people, and very fucking obviously one of these people. So this band's self-titled album from 2019 is one of my favorite records of the past decade. I have very few records that I got into that were released between 2005 and 2021 that were on obsessive repeat for me for more than a month, and this is one of them. Yet another Australian powerhouse on this list. There's a bunch of them. Taylor and her bandmates bash out and scream from the first second to the very last second. They also match attitude with punk musicianship effortlessly. Now,
and catchy ass songs too.
Yes. Now, the album is crafted as what I will call a sonic blast sandwich. Opening salvo, Starfire 500, and final summation, Some Mutts Can't Be Muzzled, take up 7 of the album's 29 total minutes. Now, with their long, muscly, dynamic intros, chugging riffs, and Taylor's guttural vocals, self-assured on the verge of arrogance, each song was clearly designed as a radio-ready calling card for the band. It's pretty awesome stuff. But I would say that the meat between those slices is arguably more impressive. It's a 9-song downhill train ride through Taylor's horn dog and inebriated soul. Speaking of which, if you want for the guys our age that still get off on punk goddess fantasies, go check out the video for Some Mutts Can't Be Muzzled on YouTube. You'll thank me. But anyway, so what I would say is that, like I said, it's this downhill train ride between, in her soul. And me personally, I love the song Control, which is 2 minutes and 25 seconds of obnoxiousness at its finest. I love people. I love pissing people off. Great stuff. So Amyl and the Sniffers make the kind of punk that produces the best kind of pithy rock criticism. Mojo called this record glorious chunder from down under. Pitchfork tells us the album is so in and of the moment, it winds up obliterating the band's fetishization of the past. When goddamn Pitchfork can give me the perfect last word, then wow. The end.
Yeah. I also highly recommend their EP from 2017, Big Attraction. That's one of the best rock EPs of the last 20 years. This band can do no wrong. Great song, I'm Not a Loser, Blowjobs, all great songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I highly recommend that as well. Yeah, if I would describe Amyl and the Sniffers, it'd be like they take the hardcore punk rock energy of Black Sabbath and it's not like Black Flag, not Black Sabbath. Sorry, the hardcore punk energy of Black Flag and put it into like down home, dirty barroom rock, and that's basically what they are. And they're really good at it. If somehow Black Flag and AC/DC had a child, it'd be these guys and lady.
I was going to say that. No, that's actually pretty good. Yeah, they've got the AC/DC kind of oi 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 kind of attitude. That kind of drinking and fucking kind of attitude. But
you're right.
I don't know. They just write
and sniffing.
And sniffing. No, they just make they just write great hooks. I think my personal favorite riff on the record is the one to Starfire 500. I mean, that thing just swings, that's just like, it's the kind of like bash out metal riff that you can just snap your fingers to,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really good. So on that note, now we're getting down to the home stretch. This is I think it's interesting on this list. Like I said, there was separation between 11 and 20 and 10 and 1. Now I think there's a pretty clear separation between 10 and 4 and 3 through 1. Would you agree?
It really is. Yes, I would. And number 3 is a guy we've mentioned already a few times in this episode, Kurt Vile, number 3.
Part 3 of the Philadelphia trilogy.
Right. Born and raised in Philadelphia and still living there with his wife and kids.
Yes.
Vile has been one of the world's greatest, most unique singer-songwriters in the rock realm for about a decade now. If anyone on this episode's countdown is a genuine superstar and would be in a better parallel universe Earth, it would definitely be Kurt Vile.
Yeah, for sure.
He's got talent, slacker, stoner charisma, even though he swears he doesn't smoke pot. Catchy rock songs that appeal to both the folk and indie rock spectra. Fun and funny interviews. I mean, Vile is the Rolling Stone and Spin poster boy that they missed out on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this guy is like Rockstar 101. I mean, he's just he's just got that. He's not even trying. He just kind of is. He has his own thing. I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah.
So
for those who haven't heard Kurt Vile, the music. Imagine Lou Reed and Tom Petty having a bastard child, and that bastard child gets stoned with pavement using weed bought from the Meat Puppets. Yet Vile does this without directly copying any of those influences, which is the sign of a great artist.
Yeah.
His melodic inventiveness and unique vocal phrasing really are all his own.
Yes, and he's got a beat and a tempo that is really just specially, uniquely his.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no one sounds like him. No one.
Yeah, no one constructs songs like him. No one sounds like him. Yeah.
Yeah. And since 2011, he's released 4 albums of startling quality. The first of that hot streak, Smoke Ring for My Halo, is my personal favorite, and it leans toward the folky side of Vile. Wakin' on a Pretty Days from 2013 leans towards swirling psychedelic guitar epics. Believe I'm Going Down from 2015 has a very Californian 1970s Laurel Canyon country rock vibe.
Yeah, it does. It's back porch all the way.
Yeah,
baby.
It's heavy on the pianos.
Yep.
And Bottle It In from 2018 takes elements of the previous 3 albums and expands on them with subtle shades of classic rock and funk.
Yeah.
They are all essential listening. Yes, get them all. They're all great albums.
Yes.
Kurt Vile's the man.
Yeah, Bottle It In is my personal favorite record of the last 5 years by anybody. I think if you say the last 5 years, I think that this is my personal favorite and might not be an overstatement to say it's the best album of those 5 years.
It's definitely my favorite album of that year for sure.
Yeah, of that year, yes. But I'd say overall in the last 5 years, I mean, what do you figure? You got the Run the Jewels album from last year.
King Gizzard's metal album.
Yeah, and then I also like Kendrick Lamar's Damn. I've come around to that too. That's up there as well. But anyway, I mean, look, Vile's special. He said, he says he doesn't smoke pot, but he's like the poster child for what a stoner is supposed to look like.
And sound like.
Very funny. This guy probably should invest in shampoo. Love you, Kurt, but invest in some shampoo. He's uniquely talented. He's very clever. He's got this kind of not deadpan, but almost kind of like it's like wacky humor with a very straight, understated delivery kind of thing. So he's almost like a kind of a folky guy, but with these pop sensibilities. But I like Bottle It In because you got these like 9 and 10 minute long songs that just have this like mesmerizing effect.
Yeah, they're very hypnotic.
Yeah, exactly. And then just a lot of stuff that's in there. I mean, and it's weird because you've got these like wonderful, like, the title track is amazing. You've got One Trick Ponies, Bass Ackwards, which is probably my favorite thing on the record. But then you've also got Rolling with the Flow, which is, back, like, let's put it this way. That's Bob Seger's best song that Bob Seger himself didn't write.
Yeah.
You know, and here's a good point. I mean, I've said this, and we had this conversation a long time ago. Like, 1970s, think of all the quote unquote rock stars or radio stars that were ugly motherfuckers. Bob Seger, Steely Dan, Warren Zevon, all these guys that was before MTV. Well, Kurt Weill fits right into that to a T. I mean, he would have been right there with those guys, man. He would have probably, you could have had an arena tour, and he would have been opening for Seger, or Seger would have been opening for him, and they would have been right there with each other. So,
yeah. Well, he is a humongous Tom Petty fan. I read that, and he's a humongous Neil Young fan too.
Which is weird because I don't necessarily hear that in the music.
But he is. He's a Neil fanboy that rivals you, Chris. In that regard.
I was going to say, and so maybe in terms of just structure and feel, that sort of natural kind of visceral, kind of getting in tune with, where you are and the kind of emotional translation. But I don't really hear Neil in the music, so it's kind of strange. So anyway,
however, Neil is a big influence on this next artist, number 2.
Major influence. Courtney Barnett. Simply put, this girl just rocks. And it's interesting that Kurt Weill and Courtney Barnett are side by side here on this list, and we'll get that into a second. Like I said, this girl, she just rocks. There's not anyone in rock quite like her. Mixing deadpan humor with sweet sincerity, emotionally real and lyrically clever. Distinctive crunchy electric guitar playing, and an instant accessibility on the level of a Kurt Cobain or a Jeff Tweedy, and no, I'm not exaggerating. The obvious starting point for discovering Barnett is her 2015 debut album, and a masterpiece, I've decided in doing my research for this episode. Sometimes I sit and think, and sometimes I just sit. Much like that title, the album sneaks up on you with its inside honesty and heart embedded deep beneath the surface wit and wisecracks. The highlight for me is An Illustration of Loneliness, which is one of the best rock songs I've ever heard about a narrow but wonderful topic. The butterflies that accompany the optimistic early stage of a romantic relationship. I think we've all been up at night, and you get to missing that person that you want to be with, and you're kind of in this like whimsical, like weird all over the place kind of state. Great stuff. A close second for me is Aqua Profunda, which is a very funny little 2-minute ditty rocker that doofully equates a schoolgirl crush to a swim meet. Yeah, it's funny, and I really think Barnett is on a par with Anna Grandusio of the War on Drugs and wielding her lyrical gifts. They're pretty much neck and neck. A couple other things to say about Courtney Barnett. She's got a gift for interpretation as a singer and arranger too, which she demonstrates with her cover of the Grateful Dead's New Speedway Boogie, which you can find on the 2016 tribute compilation Day of the Dead. It's all over the internet, but it's also all over the streaming sites. She basically turns Jerry Garcia's country jam into this slinky, slithering, sexy mid-tempo mystery. And it's really, really cool. Finally, Barnett has talented friends, as she proved when she joined forces with the artist Arturo, who just talked about Kurt Weill, who's kind of like the 6 Degrees guy on this list. A 2017 album that these two folks created together. It's called Lot of Sea Lice, or a Lot of Sea Lice. Lot of sea lice, spelled as Lot of Sea Lice. It's a neat trick, as it manages to fit Barnett's sound, depth, and humor into Weill's distinctive rhythmic template and penchant for unironic detachment. Now, definitely check that record out. Its follow-up to Sometimes I Think, which is 2018's Tell Me How You Really Feel, which is poppier but grand nevertheless. Arturo, tell me how you feel about Courtney Barnett.
I'm a huge fan. Nirvana is also a big linchpin influence on her. She's a
big time
huge Nirvana fan. She's mentioned it many times.
And it shows.
And Tell Me How You Really Feel as a track on it. I'm Not Your Mother, I'm Not Your Bitch. It's the closest she's ever come to that kind of Kurt Cobain savagery. Great track. Need a Little Time is a great single from that album. I mean, Courtney Barnett, I mean, really, she was born 20 years too late.
Yeah.
Had she been born in the 60s, she would have been a huge rock star in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. She's just a gifted person. Just great songwriter, great player, great. She's not really a singer in the classic sense. I mean, she's not Stevie
No.
Nicks, but she
No.
knows how to use her voice to really great effect to get her point across.
She sings like Lou Reed sings. She's that kind of vocalist.
Exactly, and very, very smart. I mean, the lyrics are just off the charts. So definitely go check her out. And so, drum roll, please. And if you've been listening to this podcast all along, this number one coming from me and Arturo will not be a shock in the least.
Yes.
So rock and roll Jesus, right?
Right. Number one art. He's not a band. He's an artist. Number one in modern rock right now. The man that I call rock and roll Jesus. Why? Because he's the savior of rock and roll, God damn it. Or at least he would be in a parallel universe version of Earth where rock music still matters. This is the one and only Ty Segall. And as you said once before, Chris, Segall is really the one solo artist who you could make a case for Courtney Barnett as well, who is the flag bearer for the alternative nation and for rock as a countercultural force. In a better, more rock-friendly world, Ty Segall would be as big as Pearl Jam.
Okay? Agreed. Yeah.
Hailing from the artist-friendly enclave of Laguna Beach, California, near Anaheim, Segall emerged in the late noughties with a series of self-recorded, self-produced albums of just really dirty, filthy, lo-fi garage rock thrash.
Yeah.
Those aren't negative adjectives, by the way.
They're not. Yeah, like I said,
best rock and roll is supposed to be dirty and filthy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And however, since 2011, with the album Goodbye Bread, Segall has been on a prolific album run of brilliance bordering on genius. The garage rock of his early recordings opened up and flowered into this virtuosic mix of psychedelic rock, glam rock, punk rock, heavy metal, grunge, blues rock, folk rock, country rock, and recently progressive rock.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now, the two things that stand out about Segall are the following, about Ty Segall. He does the maverick musical magpie shtick better than any one person or band in the world.
Yeah, pretty much.
He does it better. In the last 10 years, Segall has out Jack Whited Jack White. He's out Becked Beck, and he's out Pollarded Robert Pollard.
Which is that's quite an accomplishment. Yeah.
Like the Osees, he's incredibly prolific. Unlike a lot of overly prolific and inconsistent bands like Guided by Voices, however, the majority of Ty Segall's output is simply fucking awesome. And number two, what makes it awesome? Okay, well, in addition to the subgenre mastery and the guitar wizardry, Segall has become a virtuoso songwriter. His melodic invention rivals Kurt Weill, and his lyrics have matured to include stinging yet very subtle socio-cultural commentary. So, with someone containing as dense a discography as Ty Segall, where do you start? Well, as with the Osees, be thankful that you have the Curmudgeons to guide you.
Yes.
Here is a very brief, filtered primer on how to listen to Ty Segall. Are you ready? Here we go. Let's start in chronological order. Goodbye Bread from 2011. Ty spreads his wings and gets in touch with his inner T-Rex and early David Bowie. Slaughterhouse from 2012. Ty delivers nasty, noisy, scorching garage punk. And this is the album where Ty emerges as the heir apparent to Kurt Cobain. Next, Twins from 2012. Ty invents a new subgenre, glam grunge. Think Mudhoney with lots of melodic sweetness and catchy hooks. That's Twins. Next, Sleeper from 2013. Ty goes acoustic with some of his loveliest folk stylings. Next, Manipulator from 2014. Ty goes epic with perhaps his greatest album and one of the best albums of the decade.
Yep.
The greatest concoction of glam, grunge, punk, metal, and garage rock ever made. Next, Emotional Mugger from 2016. Ty gets conceptual with his first foray into progressive rock. Lyrical ruminations about the infantilization and increased childlike behavior of society collide with gnarly, skronking, King Crimson-inspired heavy rock. Next, Ty Segall, self-titled album from 2017. Ty goes all hippie jam band on us. Imagine Pearl Jam getting it on with the Grateful Dead. That's Ty Segall's self-titled album. Next, Freedom's Goblin from 2018. Ty spreads his wings even further and augments his previous dabblings with heavy metal and hippie jam band music with electronica and Captain Beefheart-esque avant-garde rock. And next, First Taste from 2019. Ty dips his toes into something approaching acoustic prog rock, maybe, with strong Charles Mingus style horn arrangements and textures. And finally, there's Segall's heavy metal side project called Fuzz, where he plays drums and does the vocals. Their first two albums, 2013 self-titled and 2015's Roman numeral 2, are all required listening and metal as it should be played, unlike the crap that passes for metal on contemporary corporate rock radio. Ty Segall is rock and roll Jesus. The Curmudgeons love you.
Yes, and there's not a whole lot I can add to that. Yeah, I mean the guy is good. He's basically in a way he's got kind of the better. I said that King Gizzard is like one of those bands that can be anything the hell they want. Ty Segall's kind of that same way. The thing about him is he kind of seems like a goofball, but he's got to be like the most confident guy in the world. Yeah. In terms of being able to just steps in and he just kind of effortlessly tosses off these things and just great rock and roll persona, great songwriter, just great, creative mind on the guy, he can kind of play by the rules and not play by the rules. He is rock and roll.
He is rock. He's the living embodiment of rock and roll, and he's a great interview too.
Yep.
And he's another one like Kurt Vile and Courtney Barnett. Those three should be poster boys for Rolling Stone and Spin. Yeah. Oh, and girls too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if there was going to be an album cover or a magazine cover to this here episode of Curmudgeon Rock, it would be the three: Kurt Vile, Courtney Barnett, and Ty Segall. They're kind of the super friends of the parallel universe. Now, here we are in our vaults, and we call this segment the vault because Arturo and I have been known to dig deep into the rock and roll vaults. I know that the music to this segment, you hear gold coins falling, and yet we have deep buckets of gold coins, and so every week we pull one of those out. So Arturo, what are you extracting from your vault this week?
Yeah, so this is another Australian band.
Go figure.
We need more. I hope our listeners are mostly Australian because.
Yeah, I was going to say Foster's, Australian for beer. Curmudgeon Rock Report, Australian for Rock Nerd Podcast.
Exactly. And this is by another, like I said, an Australian band, The Drones, and their 2005 album, Wait Long by the River and the Bodies of Your Enemies Will Float By.
Love the album title.
Hailing from the beautiful yet remote oceanside city of Perth, the Drones have been one of Australia's most beloved bands for almost 20 years. They've been on hiatus since 2017, but this just gives us more reason to take a relatively very short trip down memory lane and revisit their second and what is generally considered to be their greatest album, the convolutedly titled, one more time, Wait Long by the River and the Bodies of Your Enemies Will Float By. For the record, the album title comes from a quote by the Italian novelist and philosopher Umberto Eco. So yeah, these guys are pretty well read. The Drones have always had a kind of more or less a revolving door of musicians, with the one constant member being singer, songwriter, guitarist Gareth Lydiard. After their debut album, kind of a hodgepodge affair of covers and originals called Here Come the Flies, it failed to gain any interest from fans or critics in 2002. Shortly after that album, Lydiard and the boys and girls quickly hunkered down to write and record the material that would make up Wait Long by the River. Now, the album was actually done by the end of 2003, but the band, unhappy with how their label, Spooky Records, promoted their first album, they spent all of 2004 touring the country, Australia that is, and gathering enough money to buy out their contract with Spooky. Infidelity Recordings, another Australian indie label, were interested in the band and signed them up. Now, it was smart to go with Infidelity. This is the label, after all, that released albums in Australia by notable bands such as the Butthole Surfers, Sonic Youth, Dinosaur Jr., Mudhoney, Pavement, and the John Spencer Blues Explosion, and broke all those bands and exposed them to rock audiences down under. It turns out they didn't need to work that hard to promote the Drones. As soon as the album came out, it pretty much set the music press on fire in both Australia and beyond, and was hailed as an instant classic, a distinction that it carries to this day. In print, online, in the blogosphere, in Pitchfork, in Mojo, which is how I discovered this band, allmusic.com, Stereo Gum, you name it. You name the music media outlet, they praised the Drones and Wait Long by the River in particular to no end. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to it, it's easy to see why. Lyrically, it takes the long, character-driven narratives of peak period Bob Dylan. If Dylan's characters were all manically depressed alcoholics obsessed with death.
Yeah, pretty much.
and couches them with a sound that incorporates the epic guitar crunching of Neil Young with Crazy Horse, the art-damaged experimentalism of the Velvet Underground, the post-punk intensity of the Birthday Party, Nick Cave's old band, and the sweeping bombast of Ben's era Radiohead.
And strangely enough, the gentle and artistic guitar playing of Thompson. Thompson.
Definitely Richard Thompson.
There's definitely echoes of his guitar technique.
Sure. And we just described a mouthful, and that is pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, when Neil Young, Lou Reed, Nick Cave, Tom York, and Richard Thompson are your obvious musical touchstones, you will have music critics on your side.
Yeah, I was going to say that pretty much makes you critic proof, you know.
Shark Fin Blues, the first track and single from the album,
great song,
has gone down in history as one of Australia's greatest rock anthems, kind of akin to an Aussie version of Smells Like Teen Spirit. Quite possibly the most uplifting, anthemic, bombastic song ever written about depression. National radio station and overall music tastemaker in Australia, Triple J, voted that song as the greatest Australian song of all time in 2009.
What better than Blue Sky Mining?
Yeah.
Better than Need You Tonight?
Deck, I watch my shadow stretch. The sun pours my shadow upon that deck. The water's licking round my ankles now. There ain't no sunshine way synthesizer in the water like a slick saw link. Well, there's one there bigger than a submarine. As he circles, I look in his eye. I see John in his belly, but I can't find.
It's interesting that we get to end this
180-degree opposite for the next album.
Yes, or the next albums. And so this is an interesting thing because, I've got many sides of my rock and roll personality and journey and formation and formative stuff. Old school hip hop. This has been a tough year to be an aging hip hop head and fan. If you're in your 40s, 50s, and even 60s, what you're starting to see now is literally the edge of the most clever and funny guys and folks from the old school. But not only that, but kind of the 90s. Obviously, a lot of people wouldn't call DMX funny, but I always thought that his delivery, the guy was definitely smart and entertaining, and he had a shtick. We're not talking about DMX on this one, but but we're talking. So I'm going to do two records. Again, it's been a year. There's been several people that have died in the last couple of months. Shock G of Digital Underground died in a hotel in Florida at the age of 57. I think he was 56, 57.
He's older than I thought he was.
Yeah, no, he had been around for a while when they broke out there. Remember, it's been 30 years, since this. So he died, and then just last week, Biz Markie died, and Biz Markie, known as the Clown Prince of hip hop, but so much more than that. They both were 56, 57, and there was a really good article that I read back a while in the New Yorker. And it didn't really go into depth, but it made the point, and it was kind of a meditation on this idea that, hip hop for the artists in their 20s and 30s is awesome, and you can become popular and all of this. But then the party's over, and then you fade, and then the young pups come in, and they forget about you. And they, not only that, they don't take care of you. And so what ends up happening is you get these drug overdoses or lack of self-care, or not particularly aging well, and dying young. And so here we have Shock G and Biz Markie that are two of these. So this was a good opportunity. These are two of the funniest and smartest and cleverest people that ever performed in hip hop. Yeah. And so we'll do two albums. I'll do just brief runs through these albums. So Digital Underground, Sex Packets came out the turn of 1989, 1990.
Tupac was in the group at this point. Tupac Shakur.
Tupac Shakur got his start as a backup dancer in, of all things, in Digital Underground, which was based in the Bay, in Oakland / San Francisco. Now, back in 1990, no matter how old you were, whether white or black, whether male or female, everyone got busy in a Burger King bathroom. And that was due in a large part to Humpty Hump, which was one of several alter egos that whatchamacallit had in Shock G that he had in his arsenal. The
Humpty dance was everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's an amazing song. It's funny, it's clever, awesome beat. I said Shock G was a genius producer. He's the guy, not Dr. Dre. He's the guy that brought P-Funk into the sample vocabulary of hip hop first. And they would go all over the place. And so Sex Packets it's a very clever, very fun, in some spots, very funny record where Shock G comes into all of his personas. He was the Andy Kaufman of hip hop, basically. And he took it to the extreme, like in the famous Humpty dance video. That's not him. In the fake nose and all that, they actually hired another dude to play Humpty to kind of play up the shtick, and he always did the thing in interviews where he would do interviews over the phone in the personas, and he made sure that he kind of kept up the ruse, and so it was very fun. But anyway, good producer, good rapper, and this album, it's a party record, but also has some tough, the Oakland hip hop thing. This is Too Short. This is E40. So there is a little bit of that toughness to it. So it's a combination of funk, party music and some hardcore, sparse, kind of drum beats from, kind of the drum 808 kind of stuff from that era. And then you've got Bismarcky's Going Off, which is an absolute classic. One of the funniest albums, not just in hip hop, but rock, one of the funniest albums and one of the coolest albums ever made. Bismarcky, basically, he got famous first for beatbox. He was one of the original beatboxers. Like, my opinion, he wasn't as good as Dougie Fresh, but he was cooler than Dougie Fresh in the way he did it. It was endearing, his beatboxing. And so you take him and you take that goofy voice, kind of the deep, hey, how's it going kind of voice. And so Marley Marl, a genius, and Big Daddy Kane, a genius, worked with Bismarcky in his own way, a genius, and they came out with this record called Going Off. Big Daddy Kane ghost wrote most of the lyrics. Marley Marl did all of the beats. Marley Marl he's from of Cool G Rap and the Symphony and Big Daddy Kane fame. One of the best producers in history of hip hop, and it's just this brilliantly, goofily sophomoric record. Pickin' Boogers, Vapors, which is just a legitimately great hip hop song. Albee Square Mall, which is one of my favorite titles of all time. Another, if you grew up in the New York area, you will enjoy this one. Nobody Beats the Biz. And so what this is, it's these great kind of clever, spare, banging Marley Marl beats with these really clever, fun, flowing lyrics from Big Daddy Kane, who's like one of the great persona guys. That not only did he build up his own persona as the ladies' man, he built up Bismarcky's persona as the jokester, and then Biz's voice and larger than life personality.
Now this may sound disgusting and like very gross, but it's sure to have you tripping. See, yo, listen close. It's not bright as the sun or sweet like sugar, but it's rather on the bug tip and it's called Pickin' Boogers. Now what I am saying might not be kosher to you, but it's still something we all have to do. So go up your nose with a finger or two and pull out one or crush the crew. Yo, don't try to front like it's so gloomy and gray, cause we all pick our boogers sometime every day. Whether out in the open or on the sneak tip with a finger, tissue, or even a Q-tip. Take it from the Bismarcky, because I'm joking, and also remember this slogan.
All right. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. The next one, Chris, you know what we're doing for the next episode?
Yes, Prince versus Michael Part 2.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Ooh, we're making this a book.
Yes. It's a book. It's an epic.
The Curmudgeon Rock Report will keep on rocking if you do. Catch us where you catch all the podcasts. We know you love rock and roll as much as we do. Support us with donations at patreon.com/curmudgeonrock. Find show notes and more on our Medium site. Join us next time as rock nerds smack you with knowledge. Stay rude, stay crude, stay sophisticated. Thank you for listening.